This is Sung, the Principal and Director of Sky Academy, and we're working through functions and relations. And in this episode, what we'll be looking at is two concepts which are going to be increasingly important. They are the terms domain and range, and we'll be looking at what they stand for. So let's have a look at domain and range. Domain is the set of all x values, or the first element values in an ordered pair, that a function can take on, okay, in a set of ordered pairs. So it's basically, it's looking at all the x values or all the first element values that it can take on. All right, so it's the bandwidth of all of that. Okay, so it's not only the bandwidth, but it's the horizontal bandwidth, because the x variable, it's called a variable, tells us basically the horizontal scope that the function can take on. Okay, so it's the horizontal bandwidth. Now, the range is the same thing as the domain, but it applies to the y values, the second elements. All right, so it's the set of all y values, or the second elements, that a function can take on. Okay, so it's the vertical bandwidth. Okay, so let's have a look at what I mean by that. Okay, so I've got prepared with me a particular curve on a number plane. So let me just get that up. So we've got here, for example, a parabola, right? And on this parabola, we are going to look at the horizontal bandwidth. Now, can you see how this graph just keeps on expanding out, all the way out towards positive? It just keeps going in a positive direction, and it keeps going in a negative direction when it comes to the horizontal bandwidth. It just covers everything, right? It just keeps going, expanding out and out and out forever, right? So what we can say about that is that the domain includes all real values of x. So the domain is all real values of x. Can you see that? How it just keeps going forever and ever and ever, and it keeps spreading out to the right and to the left. All right, so it's all real values of x. The range, on the other hand, drops to a minimum at 4.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5, let's say, and it just keeps going up heavenwards, right? So the range, right, will be y greater than, does it equal to 4.5? Yes, it equals to 4.5, so it's greater than 4.5. So it's all y that is greater than or equal to 4.5, and that would be the range. Okay, so basically what you've got to do is get used to working out the domain and the range of functions just by looking at it and seeing what values does x cover, what's the bandwidth of values that x covers for the domain, and what's the bandwidth of values that y covers for the range. All right? Now, for example, if at the point 3, -3, you had a massive great hole there, and at the point -3, you had no value of x, then it would be all real values of x, but x cannot equal -3, and that would be a legitimate domain as well. All right. Okay, so just got to be able to describe what that is. And mathematicians have come up with interesting ways of writing shorthand or notation for domain and range. And I'll just go through some of the ways that you might see being used for describing the domain and range of a particular function. Okay, so this is called set notation, right? Where D stands for domain, D, and then you got a colon, which means such that. So the domain is such that x is greater than 0. All right. So it's the set of all x values, or the first elements, where x is greater than 0. All right. And for the y values, you might have the range is such that y is between 0 and 4. Okay. Another shorthand way that you might see is square brackets being used to represent greater than or less than or equals to. So if it's on this side, it's greater than or equal to, and if it's on this side, it's less than or equal to. And you have round brackets to represent less than or greater than. Okay, so if you've got square brackets followed by round brackets and you've got 0 to 4, what that's saying is the domain represents all x values between 0 and 4, where x is greater than or equal to 0 because you've got the square brackets, and less than 4 because you've got the round brackets. Does that make sense? Alright? Now that could just as easily be the range. So you could have the range being between 0 and 4 as well, and it just depends on the context. So you might write here domain equals square brackets 0, comma 4 round brackets. Does that make sense? And then the other way that you can write things is just as a sentence. So the domain is the set of all real x, all real numbers x, right? The range is the set of all values of y less than or equal to 5. Okay, so you can write it as a full sentence as well. So there's just a couple of ways in which the notation for domain and range can be used, but domain and range becomes increasingly important as you do questions that require you to determine the domain and range, or answer the question within a certain domain or within a certain range. All right, that will become important. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.